let's welcome Casey Rodarmor, creator of the Ordinals protocol.
Yo, what's up, guys? Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my talk, apparently. So it's called MEMENTO MORI. MEMENTO MORI is Latin for remember that you will die. But that's not important right now. Let's talk about runes. Okay, so runes are a new fungible token protocol for Bitcoin that I've been working on. Me and Raph and others created Ordinals and inscriptions, little technical difficulties here, as a non-fungible token protocol on Bitcoin. So you can create inscriptions, which are like NFTs. However, there is enormous market demand for fungible tokens, as evidenced by the meteoric success of BRC20. BRC20 has some technical issues, although I don't want to shit on BRC20 too hard, because it's a very simple technology that has enormous product market fit. But because of some of those technical shortcomings, I've started working on something called runes. So runes are extremely simple. The core protocol is only 500 lines of code, which is orders of magnitude less than anything else. It is compact, so Rune protocol messages, they fit easily into 80-byte opereturns. It is extensible, so arbitrary protocol upgrades are straightforward by a soft fork. It is atomic, all operations require only a single transaction, and it is UTXO based, so it is a very natural extension of Bitcoin itself. It is electric, so it can easily be lifted onto the Lightning Network. It is light, so it supports simple payment verification. This is kind of an important point. The fast, secure Bitcoin wallets all rely on something called simple payment verification. And this is possible to do with runes, but not for BRC20. And runes are expressive, so runes is integrated into Ord, and you can actually have inscriptions that are the parent of runes. So you can create an inscription, those inscriptions can have children, underneath those children, you can have runes. So yeah, that's runes. Let's see, so yeah, runes live in UTXOs. So Bitcoin, it's a bunch of things called UTXOs, which are basically little piles of Bitcoin. And when you have a Bitcoin transaction, it spends some UTXOs, and those UTXOs are destroyed, and it creates new UTXOs. So runes live in those UTXOs, and a single UTXO can hold any number of any different number of runes. So you can have multiple different runes in a single UTXO. Runes move from inputs to outputs. So as stated, when a transaction spends UTXOs, those UTXOs are destroyed. And so the runes in those UTXOs, they kind of jump from the input UTXOs, and by default, they go to the first non-opereturn output of that transaction. Then we have Runestones. So I like whimsical, fanciful names. So the runes protocol messages are called Runestones. They're very simple. They're just a sequence of integers inside of an opereturn, and they give additional instructions for what should happen with the runes in that transaction. So they can etch new runes, and they can change how runes move from the inputs to the outputs of a transaction. So by default, they go from all the inputs to the first non-opereturn output, and a runestone can change that and say, okay, send 100 a foo token to the second output, and 1,000 a bar token to the third output. Let's see what I have next. Rune names. All right, so runes have names. The names can be the characters A through Z, between 1 and 28 characters long. So if you want extremely long rune names, you can get them. They can include spacers, which are just like bullets that make them easier to read. And names are unique. So they are first come, first serve. And once you register a name, nobody else can get it. And shorter names become available over time. So when runes are launched, you can register any 13 character or above name. And then over the course of the next 4 years, every 4 months, the next length of runes start unlocking. So this is to avoid all of the very short names being taken early when the market is still immature. We sort of want those very valuable names to be saved until the market is sort of mature and people can sort of bid what's appropriate for them. And by bid, I mean pay transaction fees. There's no it's a fully decentralized protocol. There's no centralized entity. There's no fee token or whatever. Let's see, runes versus BRC20. There's actually more things that go off this slide, but that's fine. So one thing is that runes requires fewer transactions. So for each operation, BRC20 requires between 2 and 3 transactions. For each one of these transactions, you have to pay transaction fees. Runes, everything can be done in a single transaction. So that means 50% or 33% or 50 or 66% cheaper transactions in terms of transaction fees. Runes is batteries included. So BRC launched with a specification, but it didn't have an index or an explorer or a wallet. Runes comes with a reference implementation, which is ORD, which contains an index, a wallet, and an explorer. Let's see. Extensible, runes are extensible. So BRC20 has limited protocol extensibility, whereas, I think I said this before, runes can be upgraded with a soft fork. Runes are extremely simple. So BRC20 is a simple extension of ordinal theory, but it does use ordinal theory and inscriptions. So the BRC20 protocol is all of inscriptions and ordinals plus an additional extension. So Runes is not like that. Runes is extremely simple. As I said, the core protocol is like 500 lines of code. Essentially, anybody can implement it easily. You can have alternative implementations. I think a team of reasonably talented developers could come up with an implementation of runes in like a month, maybe. Better names. So runes can have names that are between 1 and 28 characters long, instead of just being limited to 4-character token names. Rune names are unambiguous. So BRC20 token names can contain arbitrary Unicode, a bunch of garbage characters. Rune names are just the characters A through Z, so they're simple to read, they're unambiguous, and they're hard to spoof. Their runes are secure, so BRC20 suffers from an interesting vulnerability where if you hold a BRC20 balance, your balance can be locked by an attacker sending you a transfer inscription. They can't take your coins, but they can make it so you then have to send that transfer inscription before you can unlock that balance, which is obviously undesirable. Let's see, UTXO based. So BRC20 is account based, so you sort of have the state of BRC20 is a list of addresses with the amount of BRC20 held by each address. On the other hand, runes is UTXO based, so this makes it a very natural extension for Bitcoin and lets you sort of take advantage of all the useful functionality of Bitcoin. Let's see, I think there's things more at the bottom. I think probably the most important thing is that runes are efficient. So you can have any number of recipients in a single transaction. So you can pay out 20 people in a single transaction, any number of runes. Whereas BRC20, you can only do a single transaction, single transfer, can only pay out a single recipient, and it can only pay out a single kind of BRC20 token. So this is a massive efficiency improvement, which is very important in a high fee environment. Let's see what else. I think people are probably not very familiar with RGB. RGB is another fungible token protocol on Bitcoin, but I'll tell you about runes versus RGB. So runes are dramatically simpler than RGB, and this is like a constant theme, the simplicity of runes. And I think it's very, very, very important, so it's worth repeating. Let's see. Runes has better UX, so RGB requires holding an existing UTXO in order to receive RGB, that should say RGB. Runes does not require you to hold a UTXO to receive runes. You just send your address and you get some runes. Runes is safer. RGB suffers from a kind of race condition where somebody can send you RGB tokens, and if you don't learn about that send, you can inadvertently lose those RGB tokens. So Runes is safer, so it relies on the UTXO model. UTXOs have a nice property that they sort of act like these little mutices in the mempool. Let's see, it's on-chain, so RGB relies on off-chain data. So every time you do a RGB transaction, not only do you have to download data from the Bitcoin blockchain, but you also have to download and upload data to a server. And this makes everything way, way, way more complicated. It's like you have to participate in two sort of networks. One is the Bitcoin network, and the other is this other servers that you need to upload and download data for. It makes the UX quite bad. It makes everything more complicated. Runes doesn't suffer from that. Everything is on-chain, so you just download transactions from the Bitcoin network, and you have everything you need to reconstruct the state of runes. Rune names are unique, so RGB token names are not. There was a lot of discussion and like Twitter drama over whether or not rune names should be unique. But ultimately, I think the degens want unique names. Degens like unique names, and we're building for degens. So rune names are unique, whereas RGB names are not. Let's see, runes versus taproot assets. I don't know how much anybody cares about taproot assets, but Lightning Lab launched a fungible token standard called taproot assets. And again, runes are way simpler, and runes are on-chain, which is sort of the same point as with RGB. Runes versus Counterparty. People probably care the least about Counterparty. Counterparty is an old school fungible token standard on Bitcoin. So again, runes, way simpler. Runes does not have any native token, so you don't need a native token to create assets. Counterparty requires a native token to create certain kind of assets, which I think is an important part about why it never became as popular as it could have been. Runes is UTXO based, so again, sort of improves scripting ability, allows you to avoid address reuse, and fits more naturally into Bitcoin. Runes is also script compatible, so Counterparty required every sort of Bitcoin feature to be developed and added to Counterparty separately. So you wanted multisig, you had to have a special kind of Counterparty multisig, they all had to be added to Counterparty. So Runes is automatically compatible with all current and future script opcodes and Bitcoin upgrades, and it benefits from things like taproot and multisig, whereas Counterparty does not. Okay, ERC20, Runes versus ERC20. So again, much, much simpler. ERC20 uses the EVM. The EVM is frightfully complicated. If you wanted to re-implement the EVM, it would take you years. I think the second part is very important. Runes are uniform. So an ERC20 is just an interface to a smart contract. And that smart contract can implement any kind of behavior, right? It can have bugs, it can have weird supply schedules, it can have backdoor keys. And so every ERC20 token is essentially has arbitrary different behavior. And to understand what the behavior of an ERC20 token is, you must audit it. You must read the solidity and make sure that it doesn't have any bugs and make sure that its behavior is acceptable. So runes are uniform. All runes behave the same. Once you read the runes core implementation, which is only 500 lines of code, you understand all runes. You know how they all behave. They all behave in a homogeneous way. And again, rune names are unique, whereas ERC20 names are not unique. There's other things. So a very clever Bitcoin developer found out how to avoid the problem of front running. So this is sort of a problem in BRC20 where you can create a transaction to create a BRC20 token, and somebody can see that transaction in the mempool and pay a higher fee and register the same name, and then your name won't be registered. So we figured out how to avoid this. We essentially have a commit and reveal strategy where the commitment includes the first input of the transaction that commits to the rune. And so this means that that commitment is only good for your transaction. So even if somebody sees your commitment in the mempool and tries to copy it, their transaction will not have the same first input. And so if they try to perform the reveal to claim the token, they won't be able to. So this is pretty cool. I actually didn't think this was possible, and somebody figured out how to do it. Runes has open etchings, just like BRC20. So this means that you can specify, when you etch your rune, you can put a time limit, either in block height or timestamp, and anybody can mint that rune before that block height or timestamp with an optional sat burn, so requiring them to burn some sats to get some runes. Then also this variable offers. So if you want to sell some BRC20 tokens, you have to do a transfer operation to create a new lot of BRC20s, like a fixed size lot of BRC20s, and then somebody can buy that lot at the price that you set. So Runes has something we call variable offers, which is you can create that lot, but then you can give an exchange rate for that lot, and somebody can, and you create a PSBT, and somebody can accept that PSBT and supply any number of sats, and they will receive runes proportional to the amount of sats that they supply. So this allows for a kind of simple, I wouldn't call it automatic market making, but an efficient way to offer runes for sale at a particular price. So you can say, okay, here's like 10,000 runes, and each one costs 1 sat, and then somebody can say, okay, I want 5,000 runes. They complete the transaction, they put in 5,000 sats, and they get 5,000 of the runes, and you get 5,000 back. So this is much more efficiently than having to have these sort of fixed size lots of BRC20s for sale. Let's see what's next. Runes versus crypto. Okay, so crypto, if you look around at crypto, it's like 99% NFTs and tokens, right? It's all, NFTs and tokens and speculation and degeneracy. Ethereum has been around for like almost 10 years at this point. And if you were to think about like a normal person on the street, like, hey, like what could a normal person on the street use Ethereum for? The answer is nothing. Like there's nothing there, right? There's all these like fancy words like DeSci and DeFi and Web3, right? Web3 was the idea that everybody was gonna move all the things that they do on the normal internet onto blockchains. And that hasn't happened at all, right? And initially, you could sort of make the argument like, okay, yeah, maybe, we're gonna start doing these things on Ethereum, but that argument is starting to look flimsier and flimsier as time goes on and Web3 is not materializing. So because crypto is 99% NFTs and tokens, I think that those things coming to Bitcoin will mean that a substantial amount of that activity is going to move to Bitcoin. Bitcoin lagged behind for a very, very long time. It did not have NFTs, it did not have tokens, but now with inscriptions, we have a very good NFT standard on Bitcoin, and with runes, we are going to have a very, very good fungible token standard on Bitcoin, and it is my belief that Bitcoin essentially is going to gut crypto. Bitcoin, Ordinals, runes, the Lightning Network, projects like Fediment are going to make the rest of crypto obsolete. Yes, and runes are live for testing. So you can go to github.com/ordinals/ord to get the code. It's integrated in Ord. You just need Ord. This part here where it says that there's docs, that's a lie. I didn't finish the docs in time, so the second link doesn't work. I promise there'll be docs eventually. But you can go to signet.ordinals.com/runes, and you can see the runes that have already been minted, and you can mint your own runes. So yeah, please test it. We need testers. There's probably bugs. So we need testers, and the better people test it, the more confidence we can have that we're not going to lose everybody's money. All right, and runes on mainnet. So runes on mainnet are going to go live on the halving. Every 4 years, Bitcoin's supply per block cuts in half. This is called the halving. The next halving is happening block 400 or 840,000, which is sometime in April. So whenever that happens, that's when runes are going to go live. Yeah, so I think it's probably going to be like carnage, but it'll be exciting. Let's see, okay, so with the remainder of my time, I just wanted to give people some sort of abstract encouragement. So we kind of find ourselves in the ruins of this fiat system, right? It has all these problems. There's surveillance everywhere, there's control everywhere. People want to take our money, they want to say who we can associate with, who we can do business with. And I think that crypto is sort of like a false god, right? People look to crypto to rescue us from these ruins, but in fact it recapitulates many of the problems of the fiat system, right? Insiders, centralization, so it's kind of not a good idea, right? And if we keep going with crypto, we're probably just going to repeat the mistakes of the fiat system, right? Insiders, control, centralization. And maybe maybe governments will not be the new masters, but we will have new masters nonetheless. Yeah, so we don't want that, right? That's bad. So we find ourselves at this sort of like crossroads, right, in these ruins. But fortunately, we have Bitcoin. Bitcoin is really the only blockchain that can make a credible claim towards being decentralized. And I think everybody knows that. Like, everybody talks a lot about other cryptocurrencies, but they know that Bitcoin is the mother chain. And everyone here who's a builder, who's building on other chains, I think you should seriously consider coming back to Bitcoin. Bitcoin offers some truly incredible possibilities that just can't be replicated by other chains. And I think that as we develop this technology further, it sort of opens the limitless possibilities of the human race. And I think Bitcoin is pretty uniquely poised to do this. So I would just tell everybody that, money is all well and good, right? But we're all gonna die one day. It's all gonna be over. And maybe the most important thing is what you wind up leaving behind, Are you gonna leave behind something that is on all these chains that just aren't gonna be around? Or are you going to build on Bitcoin, the chain that is going to be around forever, and leave behind a permanent legacy? Yeah, so I guess I would just tell everybody to, go forth and choose wisely, but remember that you will die. Thank you.